All right, this is Mel Capone again. I'm going to discuss briefly. I want to keep this video pretty short. Not much to talk about, but it's something that a lot of people struggle with is tuning these RC engines. Uh, so I think there's a lot of people who get frustrated and just give up and go electric, or they just quit quit racing or whatever because of the struggles that you encounter when you're trying to learn how to tune. And even with the experienced racers such as myself, there's times where, if you're not careful, you get that tune out in left field. It's a struggle to get it back in there. And it takes a lot of dedication and understanding of and being able to hear what the engine needs. So first thing I start with, I just want to start with a warning. Excuse me. This is your bottom needle. This is your top needle, and this is your mid-range needle. I normally run engines that don't have the mid-range needle. I don't have much experience with it, so I'm not really going to talk about it other than keeping that flush. I've been told that that's the safe place to have that flush. So let's start with the bottom end needle. The first thing people want to do is, well, maybe not the first thing, but there's times where people turn this needle in too far and they end up damaging the needle itself. So if you look inside the carburetor, you can see the black piece on the right, and that's the needle that you're turning. And when that goes inside of this barrel, that's restricting the fuel from coming in this inlet through your high-end needle. It's restricting how much fuel allows it to get inside the engine. So your high-end needle is where your feed is, your inlet supply is, but then your low-end needle is controlling how much that fuel is coming through on the, mainly on the idle and the initial crack of the throttle. So that's why sometimes when you have your needles too fat and you got that barrel, this needle screwed out too far, you're getting way too much supply at a low RPM. And so that's why you lean this down, which is turning that needle inside that barrel to restrict the amount of fuel that can flow into there. Regardless of how much pressure you're getting here, that's going to restrict how much fuel can go in there inside your engine at a low RPM or idle. But the one thing you want to be careful about is never to jam that needle up inside that barrel by screwing it here. So I've been told in the past, and I've used this method before too, is to screw this needle all the way, this needle, your bottom end needle, all the way in, and then back it out a certain amount of turns to get yourself in like ground zero so that you can have a decent place to start at with your tune. But in doing so, if you turn this needle in with this barrel closed, you're going to jam that needle up inside that barrel here, inside the carburetor, and you're going to damage your needle. And if you damage that needle, I would just replace the whole needle at that point. I wouldn't try to clean it up or anything like that. You get to a situation where you could be fighting your tune when you're really fighting damage. So what you want to do, if you ever need to close this needle all the way in and then back it out to get yourself at a good starting point, I've heard it's like 3.5 turns. I don't know. I haven't done it in a long time, so I'm not sure. But you want to open this barrel. Open this barrel up, and if you wanted to, you can take your idle screw, which is this screw here. You can pull this barrel out, run this idle screw in, and so far it'll stick to the barrel and won't let the barrel close. You can do that if you wanted to, like have it hung open if you didn't want to hold it, but it's simple just to hold it. Take that, turn it all the way in, then turn it out to some known count to start from zero. So I'm not going to do that because I've been tuned on this engine before and I don't want to screw with it. Tunes are hard to find. I'm not going to say this is the optimal settings I got here because I haven't really ran this motor much, but I definitely don't want to go screwing with it too much. It's just too hard to, without having tools, like if we had like a flow bench or something like that to tell us where we're sitting at, without having tools and equipment, it's really hard, you know. Uh, that's one of the things about Nitro. It seems to be so far behind in progress as far as new things coming out, as far as like tools or equipment, new innovations. It just seems to be kind of stagnant. Nobody's really came out with anything that I know of that's going to be tremendously beneficial or a big change. Like with electric cars, they got lipos that came out that took the place of the nickel metal hydrides and cadmium, whatever it is, that took the place of those. And all this, then they got the brushless motors. They took the place of the brush motors. So it's been a lot of innovation. But with Nitro, I haven't seen much. So it just seemed to be kind of stagnant, left behind. I wish that someone much smarter than me would come up with some stuff to really make a difference and take us to the next level. But we are where we're at, so we got to take advantage of what we have, and just because we all running with the same technology, so it's just who can learn the most. All right, so you can get your needles crossed. I believe you can get your needles crossed. I think you can have this needle so far off that you can't find anything on your high end tune. And I think you can have this high end needle so far off that you can't find the sweet spot on this. So it's a delicate balance of getting this set correct and this set correct. So let's say I don't remember what that number is, but let's say you did the whole reset on the needles, then you reset this one as well. This one you don't have to worry about as far as damaging the needle by turning it in too far. You don't really have to worry about that on this one. But I notice I got a little dent right here. That could be a potential problem if I ever try to take the needle out, but I might need to try to straighten that. But so if let's say you got your reset and you crank the engine up, and the first thing you want to do is, first of all, look at the barrel down in there. You want that barrel to be some pretty close gap. You don't want it to like way out here and you're trying to tune. You want that to be down where, it'll be a really low idle, a decent idle, where it's not really high. So you got a decent idle, crank it up, clean the engine out, get some heat in the engine, and you want to start tuning. So you want to see how sloppy it is when you first hit the throttle. If you hit it and it doesn't come up, then you might want to start turning in the bottom needle. And unless you're very experienced, I would take micro turns. I wouldn't just get in here and just start twisting it around. I'm not turning anything. I'm just spinning a screwdriver. I wouldn't get in here and start turning it around and just like making whole turns or half turns unless you're very experienced. I would take micro turns. I would take small adjustments. So say the blade's at 12 o'clock, I probably would turn to 1 or 2. Just because I know I'm so far out, that's fine. To me, that's a big jump. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, that's a big jump for me when tuning the engine. So, if I know that I'm sitting at like a default setting, I can make a little bit bigger jump. I might go to 2, maybe even 3. That's getting a little far, but so I would touch that a little bit, hit the throttle. It should sound better. It should sound a lot more crisp. And then at that point, you can come back, maybe touch the high end needle just a little bit, just because you start from default. This is going to be rich. You can kind of touch that and maybe go to 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, maybe. And then start coming back to the bottom end needle, hit that a little bit, clean the engine out. And what I was taught by Mr. Greg Settles, he lived in Colorado or somewhere out in the Midwest area or something. But Mr. Greg Settles taught me one time. We was in San Antonio, Texas, And he taught me one time his tuning technique, and I've used it ever since. And this was probably 2009, something like that, 2008. And, I've been racing and I've never changed my tuning technique. And I also use that same technique, that same concept when I go to the line, when I'm revving my car at the line. But Mr. Settles told me, rest in peace, Mr. Settles. He told me to don't just whap on your throttle. Whap, 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 whap. It's no good. It's not really telling you anything. You can't hear anything doing it that way. He told me to count. He told me to clean the engine out and then hit the throttle just like one time, like, and so after I clean the engine out, count maybe 5 seconds. And what you're doing is kind of simulating how long it takes a tree to fall. You might stand up, it may take 2, 3 to 5 seconds for the tree to fall. You're kind of simulating that when tuning, because there's no need of having it where it's extremely crisp and great instantaneously, because when you stand up, the tree's not going to drop instantaneously. You whap, you stage your car in the spot, and you stand up. And that's going to take a couple seconds. So what Mr. Greg Settles told me to do was to clean it out, count to some number. Let's just say 3 seconds. 1001, 1002, 1003. Pull the throttle and just hold it. Don't hold it down and let it go to the moon, but hold it and just a second, like let off. That's half a second. I don't believe in revving my engine to the moon when it's free loaded like that. There's no load on the engine. I don't believe in doing that. I think you're hurting your rod. I think you're hurting a lot of stuff. And I haven't damaged an engine since 2012. And that was because of inexperience from the past years before that. So it wasn't anything that I've done since I've learned. It was things that I've done that led up to that. So I don't blow plugs and I don't damage engines. I don't even change my rod. I've heard of people, they break the engine in, they change the rod. They run one season, they change the rod. I don't even change my rod. I run the same rod for as long as that engine stays alive. And, I check it. And if I feel that there's a problem, then I'll address it then at that point. But I can run and years after year after year and use that same rod. All right, so clean the engine out, get it nice and clean, pull the throttle, and then listen to it. What did it tell you? When you first hit that throttle, was it instantaneously responsive, or was it lagging, or did it bog? Did it sound like it didn't have enough fuel? So from that point, if you think you didn't have enough fuel and it sounded really lean, they come back down and running erratic, then at that point you just richen up, turn it back. Your needle's not all the way in the barrel. You don't have to worry about that damaging needle when the carburetor's closed. The only time you have to worry about that is when you're screwing way in. So don't worry about that at this point. So you just say, if you was at 3 o'clock, come to 2 o'clock. Do it again. Clean the engine out good, and then hit the throttle. Excuse me. And listen to it. Did it sound like it needed more fuel? Did it sound like it needed to be lean? So you address it as you go. So another technique you can use, you can clean it out and then just do a burp, like, and, then let it clean out again, and then count, say 1001, 1002, 1003, and see, is it responsive? Just the initial throttle touch, when you're not even pulling it up in the R's, you're just touching it. So at that point, you can say, you can hear what this bottom end needle is doing, what it's doing down in that barrel. How far is that in that barrel? Is it too far? Is it too far out and you're getting it too rich? So if it's nice and crisp, sounds really good on the bottom, you feel like you got your bottom end needle set, Um, at that point, you can start focusing on this needle, and you can kind of drive these at the same time so they don't get crossed, or you could be pushing so much fuel through here that you cross over here and you're thinking that you need to lean this down when you got so much coming out of here. You know, it's kind of hard to describe. I've crossed needles before where I couldn't do anything right, and I feel like I had one of them so far off that I could never set the other one. But you know, I could be wrong, but that's just what I felt and what I experienced. So once I feel like I got this needle pretty good or really good, now when I hit the throttle, I clean it out. I know that I'm getting really good response on the bottom end. Now when I hit the throttle, I'm gonna hold it just a little bit longer so I can hear what that top end needle is giving me. So I know that I'm responsible for initial. So when I hit it this time, I hold it just a split second longer. I'm not freeloading this engine to the moon. I'm just not trying to blow my engine up. So if I feel like I need less fuel, I'm gonna lean it down. I'm gonna turn it clockwise. And depending on how bad it sounds, I may go 1 hour, I may go 2 hours. At the most, I go 3 hours. That is a tremendous jump. If you're ever going from 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock, that is a huge freaking jump in your needle settings. That is huge. So, but if you know you're that far off, then you got experience, you can do that. My advice is to go an hour at a time. And so once I clean it out again, hold it, I hear it, I'm listening to it, it sounds like it needs less fuel, I turn it another hour. If I hit it and it's okay, if it does that, and it wasn't doing it before when I was testing my bottom end, so then I probably went a little too far with this, and I back it out and just reaching it out a little bit, you know, maybe an hour. So, and at any time you hit your throttle and your fuel tank is not having bubbles, that's another thing. Your fuel tank need to be bushioned. I use Velcro to bushing my fuel tank. If you directly mounting your fuel tank to your chassis, you're getting vibration, you're gonna get bubbles. The bubbles gonna come up here. You'll be trying to tune your engine. You're gonna be fighting bubbles, thinking you're fighting a tune when you're fighting yourself. So you want to make sure that you bushing your fuel tank. So you can limit the amount of bubbles that your carburetor is going to experience. So what was I? So if you feel like that, yeah, that's what I was saying. So if you hit the throttle and it's it won't take the fuel, then you are lean. You want to richen up. Once again, you got to determine which one you need to richen, whether it's the bottom or the top. Most likely, it's the bottom needle. Whenever you hit that, when it won't receive the fuel, most likely that's the bottom needle most of the time. So, sorry, had to pause. Wife was calling. Anyway. So if you hit the throttle and it burps, you want to richen up. If you clean it out and it skipping like, you too lean. You know, it's not coming back to a clean idle. You too lean. And like I said, you want that idle. You want to adjust that idle screw so that you have a low idle when it's just idling. You don't want it to run high. You don't want it to idle too low where it's really hard for the engine to stay alive. So you got to fine tune that, you know, and that can affect, because you're changing that barrel location with that idle screw, so that can affect your tune. So you got to play with all that to learn all that. It's just a matter of experience. It's really hard to talk about. It's easier to do it when the engine is running and you have real life scenarios, and then you adjust those scenarios, and then you have a result. It's really easy to talk about it then. And just looking at the engine is a little bit harder. So, and when I first started, I was told that, man, you go from Chicago to Texas or from California to North Carolina, man, you want to adjust the screw, you want to drop your head deck, you want to change your plug. I don't do any of that. Now, I may have to retune slightly from going from North Carolina to Chicago. There is a slight adjustment, but it's very little. Once you get tuned, you're not going to be twisting these needles, man. I'm telling you, unless you change something, unless you change your plug, change your head deck, you do something drastic, then yeah, you're going to have to change your tune. But you can go clean across the United States, and you really going to either not touch these needles once it's tuned really good, or you're just going to make a fine adjustment. And we're talking about just blades of the screwdriver, just hours on the hand of a clock. You're not talking about big adjustments. All right, so that's it. You want to make sure that you got a good return spring. I use a rubber band, like you get in Walmart, just a little small rubber bands. Those ones I had on here a while ago, I don't use those. They don't work good. I don't use these. But it's just like a little girl put in her hair for ponytails. That's what I use for the return spring. Just a rubber band. I wrap it around my barrel, goes around my horn. It just keeps it closed. All right. So that's all I can think of now. Keep your carburetor clean. So depending on what kind of, this is drag racing, and temperature makes a difference. That's another thing. Temperature does make a difference. If you have really cold weather, you potentially need to change it. You're gonna have to change the needles from cold to hot. Like I'm trying to remember what it is. When you go cold, you need I think more fuel. Yeah, you want to richen up when it's cold. When it's hot, you want to lean. But then it's all about what the motor's telling you when you make a run. You don't just automatically say, go out today, oh, it's 10 degrees colder today, I need to change my needles. No, don't automatically assume that. Just make a run, listen to the engine, let it tell you what you want, what it needs. It'll tell you. If you just have the ear, it'll tell you. It's just a matter of experience. And keep in mind, revving to the stars, it's not smart to me, but I mean, a lot of people do it. Maybe they don't hurt the engines, maybe they do. I don't know, but freeloading that engine, revving it to the stars is just not necessary. I just think unless you got a decent tune, it's just not necessary. And good fuel, use good fuel. And that's another thing, use corrosion X. When you stop running for the day, what I do is I let all the fuel run out of my engine. I crank it up on the starter box, let all the fuel run out, and then I use a protective coating inside, and it's called Corrosion X. I use that stuff to spray it in my engine, and I take the glow plug out, spray it in my engine, rotate the flywheel, and then I leave the plug out. Once I get it good and coated inside, I take a piece of toilet paper or a rag or something, put it over top of the motor, turn the engine over on the starter box, and blow the excess out. And then I leave that corrosion X in my engine, and that will protect your engine for a long time. But if you leave fuel in there, you could get some corrosion and rust. This front bearing will seep oil. You want to wrap a paper towel or something around that to keep it from getting on your clutch. All right. Hope I covered as much as I could. Hope I didn't confuse anybody. Hope I did a good job, and good luck tuning.